And good Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. It is another Total Seminars. Ask Me Anything. Hi, I am Dave Rush, not your usual host, as you'll recognize, but very glad to be here. I'd like to welcome you, I think, to our first, we don't have an official name for this outside of AMA or Ask Me Anything or Q&A. Internally, we've kind of adopted a title, Drama, the Dave Rush Ask Me Anything. And for my own notes on all the files and slides and things that I make, they're all entitled Friday Pie Day, because that's what we're going to do here. So as you know, we've been doing the AMAs ever since COVID has sort of trapped some of us at home. And Mike started out doing 5 days, and then he's back down a little bit, just to sort of keep an even load of folks watching. So Mike is doing his Mike AMAs on Mondays and Wednesdays, and he's very kindly allowed me and maybe even asked me to pick up the Friday slot, where we're going to talk about Raspberry Pis as they can be used in a real world sense and certainly in an educational sense. Oh, let me see something here. Hey, Raggedy Schmatz. So this is a work in progress. We're going to learn as we go along, find the best ways to do these kinds of presentations and screenshots and things like that. And as I was prepping for this, I closed a file that needed to be open. It's opening now. There we go. Oh, stop it, you. So the purpose of this and all of the AMAs is for those of us who are isolated home during this COVID crisis. We're still looking for opportunities to improve our technical knowledge, to prepare for CompTIA tests and any other kind of technological computer-oriented situations that arise. So first of all, I want to offer my just sincerest gratitude to Mike for offering me this platform, and to the wonderful staff of Total Seminars who help out with these things. Michael Smyer is here. Scott Journey is here and ready to pop the button and join me if need be. So we'll see if any of you guys try to drag him into it. I'm not going to watch the feeds very much. I'll try and catch up between activities here. I'm going to sort of follow my notes and show you what I've got to show you. But those guys are listening and helping out, and they have incredible, extensive knowledge in a grand breadth of information. So while they both are Pi familiar, they are also Linux guys and, of course, technology guys, and the women in the company too. So everybody's here. This is going to happen every Friday, 2 o'clock Central Time, for the duration. So even if this one goes really badly, I hope not, we'll fix it and try it again next week. As always, this is our AMA. It's not just necessarily dedicated to Pi. I'm going to focus everything I do on Pi. But if you've got regular questions, A+, Network Plus, Sec Plus, whatever, or the usual things about Total Seminars, post away. Scott will hit them. I'll try and catch up on them, and we'll go from there. So let me try a little bit of screen sharing here. Hey, it's down there. And we picked up, well, I had it and then it moved. That's weird. Oh, okay, I see what happened to it. There we go. We share that. So if you would like to contact me outside of this forum, by all means do so. You can get me at my company address, daveR@totalsem.com. And I'll be happy to give you my regular personal email address. It's drushtx, like Dave Rush, Texas, @Yahoo. Please, if you're going to contact me by email, by all means do. Just use one of them. I don't need the duplication. Everything that goes to one automatically gets copied to the other. I don't get much Steam time these days, but when I do, you can find me as Blood Rush, and saw some new sales on the later versions of Borderlands that I don't have. There's an office phone number. Nobody's there directly to man them. We do have people who do pick up the calls, and if you need to talk to somebody at Total, or if you need to talk to me, you're gonna have to convince somebody there to answer the phone and forward it to me or get it to me, but there's the number. You can see that. So if you need anything, cool bananas. Because you are kind enough to join us, we have our weekly special that isn't advertised everywhere. This is basically available to you guys, and they're always just incredible deals. So the special of this week, 50% off our total seminar video bundles. That's our super bundles. The super bundles come with practice tests and sims or something along those lines. You'll see them posted on the Total Sim website and on video/tester bundles. Not just the dedicated video courses. It's only for the bundles. Go to totalsim.com, pick up your products, and then at checkout, use the code MMLiveStetson, Mike Myers live presentations, and he always wears that lovely white Stetson hat. That code is good through August 2nd, and next week we'll start a new code. Stand by, reading please. I love that one from Mike. All right. That's all the precursor stuff. So what we're going to do here, if we've got to timeline this thing, is we're going to look at this Raspberry Pi thing like a course, which means for some people, the first 1 or 2 episodes might be a little boring. And for some folks, I hope, who've never played with the Pi yet and haven't considered doing so, they've got a starting place. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, for exactly what I've just discussed. And 2, so that down road, when somebody who says, hey, I've heard about this Pi thing, I want to look into it, then we have a week-by-week, step-by-step course that they can follow along with. So today we're going to be fairly elementary. It's all about what do I have to do to purchase a Raspberry Pi? Where can I buy it? How much do they cost? What's the difference between one and the other? And what do I need once I bought it? So we're going to go through those steps. That stuff's fairly easy. It's just list it and show it. Then we're going to talk about the process of making it operational for the very first time. We're going to spend a good bit of effort today doing that. And then once we've completed that today, we're going to say, okay, now let's find a real world use for it that's not just real world, or maybe this is the other way around, a way to use it in prepping for A+, Net+, perhaps ITF+, and it's got its uses even in Security+. Next week, we're going to expand on that. We're going to start digging into the guts of Linux and of the file system, manipulating the file system, navigating it, things like that. And each week, we're going to keep adding and adding and adding. Half of what we present will be as directly tied to some CompTIA educational process as we can, and the other half maybe a little more real world-ish, or at least kind of tied, excuse me, to education and real world. So let me do a quick glance at questions. I see Scott's got tons of answers going on all over the place here. And see if there's anything that's good for me. And then I'm going to start into the lesson. And we're 8 minutes in. That's about right. Greetings, Tullowit, and greetings, Brendan. I was expecting that you would be first ones in, and so be it. Likewise, Mario, nice to see you. I knew we had a nice little bit of conversation going on Wednesday. Drama happening. Who's that? Rob Frederick. Hello, Rob. I haven't communicated with you directly before. Mr. Robot, we've seen eating a pizza pie while learning Raspberry Pi. Nice. Greg. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, right. If you haven't been here for the last 2 or 3 Mike AMAs, then you wouldn't be aware that we've gone to the 2-in-1. Again, still 3 days a week. Just Fridays become Pi Day, at least for the moment. Is each Friday going to be different? Of course. Oh, regarding a concert shirt. I have enough to get us through 1 or 2 seasons. Then I'm going to run out. I try and catch about 5 concerts a year. And the only concert tees that I own are ones that I attend. I just can't bring myself to buy one if I haven't been there. So yeah, we're going to give that a whack and see how long that goes, or in case it gets boring. But you know, if I start reaching into the barrel and pull out the ABBA shirt, then we may have to change the program a little bit. Yeah, right. Of course, they're 70s bands. That's because I'm sort of a creature of the 70s. Oh, we got a pie on the way, Brendan. Way to go. Let us know which one you got. Brendan Scott, right? Okay. All right, so caught up. Hello, Alice. Alice, I never did mention this. I meant to. Like most Americans, I've got about 85 different nationalities buried in my background, but I would say I'm 1/4 from your home country. We are Angelis, somewhere back up in northern Italy, I believe. Of course, when all the relatives whose name is still Angeli go to restaurants, nobody knows how to pronounce that, and they will call Angeli, party of four, Angeli, and so we have nicknamed each other Peanut Butter. Greetings, Dr. Quinn. Wonderful to see you. Okay, so off we go. Let's launch into the material here. Why pi? Or why did we choose to do this? Well, we chose it for a couple of different reasons. One, because it comes up on rare occasion and came up on rare occasion in some of Mike's early AMAs, and there were people who chipped in, hey, I like those things and I use them, and Mike knows that I'm a big fan of them. And so as we've sort of watched the demand on the feeds for people who participate talking to me about it and ask questions about it, we said, there's a need, and I have introduced the Pi into some of our corporate offerings as part of A+ lab kits that we sell and things like that. So it seems sort of a natural progression to move this in. I am a very strong believer that the Pi is an incredibly useful tool for an educational environment. So as I've said in the past in other AMAs, everything that I'm going to do with the Pi here, almost everything, you can do with another computer. You can create a virtual machine in a PC or a Mac and put a Linux system up, and you can do native web servers and lots of other goodies. And so as a learning tool, it is not a requirement by any stretch, but I think it's just so darn convenient, and it's so darn cool, and it's so darn useful after you get done studying for a particular exam, the other neat and amazing things that you can do with it. I'll go through that as they go. So they have homes in ITF, A+, Net+, Sec+, and everything goes. As many of you were perhaps surprised to learn, A+ added Linux commands when they went from 902 to 1002. Now we did a couple of Linux oriented commands. It was the raw command line stuff found in FTP servers. But moving back to a screen share right now, let me show you something. Share that. So if you go into A+ and look at all the objectives over here on objective 1.9, they say here's some basic Linux commands that we've got to know. And here's the entire list. Now, I haven't heard people get questions on every single one of these, but certainly the common ones, the most frequently used, ls, cd, it's important to know the difference between pwd and password. Over this course, and in fairly short order, we're going to cover every single one of these. And that includes some stuff today. All right, so what do we do with them? Why do they fit in this world that I believe in? Well, of course, we're going to make servers. We're going to make web servers and FTP servers and SSH servers. We're going to learn Linux commands. We're going to learn their structure. We're going to learn some important Linux apps. And this is important. This comes up to Mike all the time. Hey, Mike, do I need to know Linux to get an IT job? And the answer to that is no. But if you want to advance in the IT world, then that answer switches to yes. Okay, the back end of the internet, not the stuff that we sit down and play with every day, but everything that we connect to and log into and all the databases, those are running on Linux boxes. So it becomes a very important skill if you want to advance through the IT ranks. I like the Pi because while again, you can do all that other stuff I listed with a PC, 35 bucks. It's cheap. And I don't have to do a $35 web server and a $35 FTP server and a $35, this one, SSH server. I can do all of those on one box and much, much more. It's cool. It's portable. It's great for kids. All right. Christmas, it's right about now. It's time to start thinking about Christmas. You get your hands on these for a couple of weeks and start to realize their power. And this suddenly says, guess what I'm getting for my niece Susie, my son Sam, whatever. Good stuff. And it goes way beyond the stuff we're going to do here. Take a peek at this guy ever so quickly. Hey, this case is really cool. And those of you who have played with 3D printers, have one, have access to one. I printed this guy in hour and a half, something like that, for a top and bottom half. There we go. Now they can make totally enclosed ones that obviously is a little quicker to do these perforated ones. All right, so here's a Raspberry Pi. I know it's kind of tough to pull this off with this camera this way. You're not going to see everything in full detail. But what I want you to see here is there are 40 pins on here called a header. And that header allows me to do add-on boxes to it. Add-on circuitry, individual components, wiring. So as we get deep into this thing, we're going to look at that. And we're going to come up with some add-ons that you can buy, some add-ons you can make. Here's one, the little add-on that's got a 3-segment LED display. A gentleman that I know in Arizona developed this thing and came up with an app for it. And then he and I started working together on it to make it do some things that he hadn't done. As it comes out of the box with instructions, it's really kind of cool. When you power up your, this isn't even a Raspberry Pi, this is an Orange Pi, but it works on the Apple Pi or Raspberry Pi, that's what he did first. This thing will, after it's booted up and gets an IP address, show you the 4 digits of your IP address. 192, pause. 168, pause. You get the idea. So that's one kind of plug-in. And this plug-in has the same 40. This is an older one. It's got 24 wires on it, 24 pin header. But there's 40 pin headers on the newer ones. This one is another kind of add-on box. There's a Raspberry Pi here that looks like this. Flat, single, thin, but somebody's made an add-on to expand the capabilities of that. This is a Raspberry Pi Zero for size and for cost. This thing is $5, by the way. Holy Hannah. But somebody said, I really like that thing, except I wish it had some USB ports on it or some other goodies. So a gent created a little pop on those pins and in it goes. All right, so possibilities then. They're great for kids. They're great for experimenters. They're great for students. Some of you have talked about, maybe some of you have taken one that's, let's use that one that's in the box, and installed different versions of Linux on it. Very popular to put Kali Linux on here. Kali is a suite of applications that's used for penetration testing and things like that. Now, what's great for these little Pi Zeros, these are wonderful for embedded systems. Okay, I want to make a computer-operated remote control car, thermostat. I used one of these. It's kind of overkill to do this, but I built a sensor onto it that was a motion and darkness sensor. And when it detected that it was both dark and that there was motion in proximity, it would turn on a little LED light. And I have a couple of these placed on the baseboards of my stairs. That's an embedded system. So we can do neat things like that. It's a camera platform. There are bazillions and bazillions of sensors, humidity sensors and water sensors. This amazes me. If you go to the Raspberry Pi forums, raspberrypi.org, and you look in the forums, there is a niche market world that is always looking for ways to sense when water levels are too high or too low and trigger either a pump to add water or subtract water. Obviously great in farming and irrigation systems. Also good in case your hot water heater overflows into the pan, whatever. So yet another embedded system and lots and lots and lots of cool things here. One of the things I find that's really cool about them, hard to see on here, but if we look back in here, the primary storage, the hard drive of this thing is a micro SD card. So I plug one in, install the operating system. It's actually done in kind of a reverse order from that. and it boots up and I do with it what I want to do. Now, when I'm done with that, I got a couple choices. I can leave it there, I can undo it, and I could add more, or I'll pop this guy out, put a label on him and say, oh, this is my FEH server. And then I'll install a totally new version, a Kali version. Hey, here's one. And pop the old card out, pop the new card in, and suddenly I've got a Kali server. So this, if you were to try to do that with your PC at home, I'll just pull the old hard drive out, pop a new hard drive in, install a new operating system that's customized for my day-to-day tasks. Not very practical. Here, it's really practical. So I was going through the objectives of the various CompTIA certifications to identify places where PIs would be useful. And I just made a couple of quick notes. Not many folks here doing ITF, but we get some, and you may wind up teaching it with the credentials that you're developing it now. So in here, PI's fantastic for ITF, just to discuss the computing process. Remember, computing process, we do this in A+ as well. Excuse me, before I dry out. It's not Slurm. I'm not telling you what it is. So the computing process, fetch, decode, and execute, and optionally storage. We have a little micro SD card on these as well. They do all the apps in that class, word processing databases, SQL databases, spreadsheet. They do coding in that certification. We can check out the non-removable CPU and RAM and some of the other things on there. All good tools to study with or to teach with in an ITF. In A+, we move this thing. All of those things apply, most of them. And then what I think this is its strongest value is when we talk about the networking aspects and ports, protocols, applications, servers, clients, and Linux commands. And that's mostly what we're going to focus on in here. Network Plus, more ports, more protocols, WireShark, sniffing, and tons of different server types. I'm not going to develop anything for the existing Security Plus. I just got from Mike and Scott the objectives for the new Security Plus. We're in the house. I'm allowed to have that, but I can't share it with anybody. But now that I've taken a look or started to take a look at the objectives, I'll start creating some objectives and goals, and maybe we'll call it courseware, to see how this will fit into the program. Okay, so what is it? Where does it come from? Well, this thing comes from a group out of jolly old called the Raspberry Pi Foundation, run by a gent there, a PhD even, who has a desire to make computing available to the entire world. So he and his foundation were buying computers and providing them to places that were underserved. And he said, you know, I've got a PhD and I know professionals. How about I make my own cheap computer for everybody? So way back when they made the first model, I got a pile, or I got one here sitting right there. This is one of their very first models, 256 megs of RAM, and not a lot of performance, but hey, you could plug this thing in. It had regular old composite video output, so you could plug it into an ancient television. Had a couple of USB ports for a mouse and a keyboard, and people could start to learn to code from this thing. It came with a bunch of languages, a bunch of Javas and Python and so forth, and it sold for 35 bucks. And every year or so, maybe a little longer, they improve the power and capability of whatever the current model is and sell it for 35 bucks. So we're many years into this thing. I think I got my first one around 10 or 11 years ago. Maybe not that quite far back, but been around for a while. We're on the 4th generation, and Eben still does this. He provides these computers that he makes to underserved areas, and of course he sells them for a profit at that. Even at 35 bucks, there's profit, and then the more advanced models, they make a little more money, and then they can use that money for direct computer peripheral purchases and distribution, improvements of the product to make them better for the audiences they're serving, and so forth. So nonprofit, their goal is to bring affordable computing to the world. Makes and models. Well, they all have something in common. They are all an SBC, a single board computer. And except for the earliest models, they all have a quad core CPU. It's an ARM CPU. It's usually made by Broadcom. So it's not Intel. It can't run the programs that Intel, and it's not whatever Apple's running these days. They got Intel and they're talking about moving to an ARM processor, actually. Excuse me. But single board computer, it's got a CPU, it's got not replaceable RAM. The RAM is soldered on in one of the tiny chips in here, and the various peripherals. The expansion header, they call it the GPIO, general purpose input output, and it's got some kind of video output. The current modern product has a pair of micro HDMI connectors. You can run a 2-monitor system with this. It's got some pre-designed expansion ports. There's a special kind of video expansion port. It's an industry standard. It's not special in that respect, but it's not one that you're going to find in your PC or your Macintosh. There's audio outputs. This one's got a USB-C connector for power. It's got a pair of USB 3 connectors, a pair of USB 2s, a real gigabit LAN connector. Up until recently, they've only had 100 megabit connectors, and you couldn't get the full 100 megabit because they had to share bandwidth with the other peripherals on here. But this one they have now dedicated. You're still not getting a full gigabit out of it, but you're getting over 600 megabits, and that's just pretty doggone happy. So models. They've got 3 models of this little Zero guy. Bare bones. This is a bare bones one. It doesn't have an expansion header on it. It doesn't have any networking. It doesn't have wireless networking, and it doesn't have wired networking. So this guy is great to develop on in a embedded system. Thank you. Then they make ones with headers. It's got the pins already on them. You can solder your own pins on these. I only need these 5 connections, so I'll solder 5 pins into there. Great way to learn your soldering skills. And then they make another model, either wired or headerless or headered, that also has a Wi-Fi interface in it. Those things run from $5 to about $14. I think these only have a half a gig of RAM, only half a gig. I am so old, I still find that number impressive. And then the current full-size flavors are the Model 4s, the 4Bs, the 4B Plus. So we took a quick look at him already. Got a powerful quad, I think 1.6. They may have bumped it up to it's overclockable. You can get these things up to 1.8 gigahertz with cooling. And again, you got the quad core. They've got a 64-bit operating system available for it, and it's just tremendously expandable. You can still also get their last generation. They're still manufacturing them, the 3B. It's actually the same price as the 4B, and they look very similar. The only difference in the looks is the 3 has a single full-size HDMI connector, and the power connector is a micro USB, not a USB-C. All of the experiments and labs that I'm doing today, I'm doing on a 3. Reading my notes. They have some more expensive models. For $75, you can get an 8 gig version. There are 3 flavors of the Model 4, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes, and 4 gigabytes. And those run from $35 to $45 actually. So where do I buy one? I'm glad you asked that question. They're available in all the computer reseller sites. So you can go to Micro Center, you can do this online, or if you've got one in your city. Same for fries.com. Amazon, you can get them off of. Amazon sells bare bones system, but they also sell kits. Big kit provider is from Cana Kit, C-A-N-A-K-I-T. Not surprisingly, a group out of Canada. And they make various types of kits that have the motherboard and connectors and power supplies and things like that in there. And they start somewhere around $100 depending on the model that you're going to get. Very popular company available here in the U.S., Adafruit, A-D-A Fruit, run by a young lady named Miss Ada or Miss Ada. an electrical engineer par excellence. She started by making addable devices for these things, and they have just a great collection of them. We'll explore some of them. And then she became a reseller of them as well. The original US distributor is a company called Newark. You can find them at newark.com. Buy them wholesale there, and it's the same price as retail. But what's cool about Newark is they are connected to a hobbyist site called Element14, all one word.com. And those are folks who buy stuff from Element and make stuff. And it's everything you imagine. It's not just Pi stuff, but do check out Element14 and Newark. I buy most of mine from Micro Center. They have about a monthly sale. They take $5 off each model. And I head down there on Sundays whenever the sale is and buy one or two at the risk of my marriage. The operating system. It was Raspbian. Michael's mentioned Raspbian in the past. I have too. They have changed the name. It is now the Raspberry Pi OS. I may use the terms interchangeably, but the current and correct term, Raspberry Pi OS. And the cool thing about Raspberry Pi OS is whenever they release the newest version, it is fully backward compatible all the way back to the original Model A. So it's a quad-core 64-bit operating system. Well, this thing wasn't. This was a single-core 32-bit. When you go to install it, it says, oh, okay, I see your Model A. Here, I will apply the appropriate code, and it will run. So very useful stuff. Now, that's the operating system that's written by or forked by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Excuse me. There are others, some of which Raspberry Pi Foundation supports, and some of which are developed by others. So I'm going to take you to a website here. Really, I am. We got to go over to this page and this page here, and then do a screen share. All right, this is the raspberrypi.org/downloads page. And it's not very big, but as I scroll down here, and by all means, follow along in your own browsers while I'm doing this, you can see they've got, first of all, a downloadable Raspberry Pi OS. You can download that thing. It's about 4 gigs, a little less than 4 gigs. And I'll show you how to get it on a micro SD card. Or you can download Noobs. Noobs is not an operating system. It's an installer program on a micro SD card, or that you're going to put onto a micro SD card. And it comes in 2 flavors. Full Noobs, I'm clicking on that. Hopefully it'll take me there. There we go. Full Noobs here, and Noobs Lite over here. Full Noobs has a menu of installable operating systems, plus 1 operating system that's already on the card. You can see it takes up about 2.3 gigs worth of space, but that thing's really cool. You download that, you copy it onto a micro SD, you pop it into your Raspberry Pi, power the Pi up, and it gives you a menu option. It says, hey, do you want to install the one that I've got here ready to go, Raspberry Pi OS, or do you want to install one of these other 4, whatever the case may be? And if you select one of those, it says fine, but you got to be connected to a network, and it will reach out to the download site, pull in the operating system that you want to install, and install it. This other one, Noobs Lite, is exactly the same thing with 1 minor difference. Excuse me. It doesn't have any pre-installed operating systems. They're all, you got to get them from the net. These are free. In fact, everything that I'm going to show you is free. This is all open source stuff. This is really cool. You don't have a Raspberry Pi today. You don't, you're going to order one. I know you are, but you want to play first. So download this guy. This is actually a copy of Ubuntu, and it's a real total complete copy of Ubuntu, but it's been customized to look and act in many, many ways like the version of Linux that you'll find on a Ras Pi. It's got the Raspberry Pi desktop. It's got the same kind of menu interfaces. So instead of using Ubuntu's method of, I don't know, installing or setting up networking, it uses Raspberry Pi menus. So that's a really cool download. If you've started to experiment with virtual machines, install this one as an Ubuntu operating system. You can also install that onto a thumb drive. Use Rufus and install that and run it as a live CD. So it won't change your hard drive. You can just say, oh, I don't want to install, I want to run it, and you'll be running it from the flash drive. And it even gives you a couple of choices in there. Run from the flash drive and allow changes to persist. So you can use that and change the content of it. Or you can say, no, 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 don't save anything that I did. When I boot up again, I want it to boot up fresh like a new operating system. You can see they got a couple of flavors of real Ubuntu that are designed to run straight on the Pi. So Ubuntu with the mate interface, Ubuntu Core. Ubuntu Core is just the guts level stuff of Ubuntu that you need to run an IoT device. And Ubuntu Server is Ubuntu Server. It's Ubuntu, but it doesn't have the user interface stuff. LibreElec, operating system supported by Raspberry Pi Foundation. This is an OS that's designed specifically to support Kodi. Yeah, I can remember what, I just went mic mode. It's Kodi. I know what it does. I don't remember what it stands for. But it used to be XBMC, Xbox Media Server Center. And it's just a really cool way to reach out onto the web and get various streaming video sources. Mozilla Web Things, this is another IoT operating system. PiNet is an operating system that's designed to run a classroom. You've got a classroom Pi server. All the students have a Raspberry Pi. And with this, you don't need SD cards for each thing. You keep a master copy of all the various operating systems on the classroom server. They come in, they plug in, it reaches out to the server, it downloads the operating system they're using in class and all of the stuff that they've saved. And this is really cool then. So you can have a ever-changing classroom and everybody's got their own image of what they work with saved on the master server. RISC OS, if you're into RISC, I'll let you reach into that. Here's a kit they have. It's got a bunch of weather-related instruments, an anemometer and thermometer and hygrometer and all that kind of stuff, and an operating system and the cabling that's designed to talk with that and work with that and have your own weather station. Now, what's really cool about that, people take these and they will mount the Pi on the back of a monitor and put it in a hallway, put it in a lobby, and put that real-time information up there. It can be used to feed information on interactive websites. Totally cool. Last one on this page, and I won't dive much deeper into this. I want to start getting into the meat of this thing pretty quick. If you are old like me, that's kind of cool. There are older people than me who grew up and cut their teeth on mainframe programming applications, Fortran, COBOL, things like that. I had to do that in college, but it was already starting to get old back in the early 80s. In the mid 70s and late 80s, or through mid 80s, what students learned in high school and college was BASIC. And while there's a bazillion basics out there, Ichigo Jam is kind of a really, really broad one. And what's super cool about this one, this download is an operating system that takes you straight into the Ichigo Jam basic programming environment. And that environment has been heavily customized to support all of the expansion tools, devices, interfaces, excuse me, I dropped something that I need in my hand, of the Raspberry Pi. So if you cut your teeth running BASIC and you still haven't gotten into Python and JavaScript and all that, you still want to play BASIC, it's there. Here's a good OS to do that with. Okay, back to notes here. So all that stuff is on raspberrypi.org/downloads. No, I don't want to see that. Oh, I'm sharing still, that's why. Okay. Okay, covered all that, covered all that, covered all that. Hey. 14 pages, we're 7 pages through. That's just perfect. Oh, so on Wednesday, somebody was posting with me on the feed, and they were talking about Arch Linux. So Arch Linux, Kali Linux, and a dozen other ones. You share our team's chat. Yeah, I saw that. Sorry about that. And people will go back on the recorded version and freeze it. And fortunately, we don't curse on that thing. Anyway, there's other flavors of Linux that aren't supported directly by Raspberry Pi Foundation, but lots of other folks use it and support it. So Arch Linux is available. As I said, Kali is not an operating system in and of itself. It's a version of Linux with a bunch of utilities and a menu to access them. The process. I've just downloaded Noobs, and in fact, I did that a little bit earlier today. It's a little 2.3 gig zip file. And if I want to get this guy up and running, let's take this. I'm going to need a few things. You can use a Mac, you can use a Linux machine, you can use a Windows machine. I tend to start things in the world with Windows. So I get a little micro SD card. I know I'm looking down, and an adapter, and slip the one into the other, and then put that into some kind of USB micro reader. Now, if you're using a laptop, you might already have the appropriate slots for it. See if that goes in, right. And I'm going to pop this into a Windows machine. I'm going to do a fresh format on that card. And you can do that with a couple of different utilities. You may be able to use the Microsoft formatter. You may have to get a third-party, good grammar, formatter here. There is a formatter out there in the world called SD Formatter 4.0. You're going to get that from sdcard.org. It's free download, and use that and just smoke the contents of your card here. Plug them into your computer, and then you take that Noobs or that full copy of Raspbian that you downloaded and unzip it. Now, the full Raspbian will already be unzipped. Noobs will be zipped. You unzip it, and there will be some files and some folders. Put all those in another folder, and all you have to do is copy the contents of that zip onto here. That work is done. You don't need the Windows machine anymore. And so now we're going to go step by step through the process. Drop my card. Hang on. All this stuff is documented on the Raspberry Pi site. And I have this all documented step by step, everything that you need to do everything that we're going to do today and in every other course we're going to do here. What we need to do is myself and the Brain Trust to get together and come up with a mechanism that will make it accessible to you. And hopefully I'll have that worked out for you before next Friday's Friday Pi Day. If not, I'll take some personal steps. I've got a website running off in the world somewhere. I can make a little page called Drama Downloads, and you can download all these labs. One of the really cool things about Noobs is it's an installer. It's going to do its thing. When you do the installation, when you plug in your Pi and you get the boot started, I'll show you that in a second, or I'll tell you about it because I can't get it screen shared, it's installed, it's done its thing, you're running, you're having a good time, and for whatever reason, you're ready to do it again. Maybe the reason is you've got so much junk and clutter on it that you just want a fresh start. Maybe you mess something up so badly that it's irreparable. Hope not. That's mostly everything is reparable. Maybe it's become corrupt. That can happen. This is an old Linux system. Remember the old warnings we used to get? Don't unplug your Windows computer because certain files can become damaged. Well, that's still a true statement here. You really want to do a correct shutdown. I've shut down zillions of them and have never damaged one. But on the forums, there are plenty of reports of folks who did. So here's what you do. You reboot it. The Noobs menu comes up briefly, and you just hold down the shift key when you see that, and it launches the installer again, and you can start all over from scratch. All right. So I got to talk through some of this stuff. I can show you and will show you many things that are going on the Pi in real time with screen sharing and things like that. But the screen sharing capability doesn't exist until after we've got the installation done. So pardon me for just a couple of minutes of boredom here while I sort of talk through it. And again, these steps are documented in general on the raspberrypi.org site and in detail when I get mine up for you. So what do I need? I just bought the Pi. It just came from UPS. I went to Fry's and picked one up, whatever. You can't do it with just holding this puppy in your hand. There's a few things that you've got to have, and there's a few things that you'll probably want to have. So what do I need? I need a Raspberry Pi. I need a micro SD card, micro XD card. How big? 4 gigs. Sorry, Raspberry Pi Foundation is recommending a minimum of 16 gigs for the current version, and bigger if you're going to use a lot of stuff. You're going to throw a lot of servers on there. You're going to do a lot of heavy experimentation. They're getting cheap. You can buy slow ones for $5, decent ones for 10, and usually it's about $1 a gig for a well-performing one. Watch out for the counterfeits and all the usual caveats that go with that. You got to have a power supply. There are little wall warts. If you get a model that's previous to the 4s, it'll have to have a micro USB on it, and it needs to support at least 2.5 amps, 2.4. 3 amps for the micro, or for the 4, and again, he uses a USB-C connector. And that's a 5-volt power supply, of course. Now, with those 3 things, that's enough. I can do that. I can do a setting on the little micro XD card here to turn on SSH capability. And as long as you don't set this thing on anything metal and short out the pins, a power supply, a micro XD card with the appropriate settings, and turn this thing on and just let it do its thing. You basically turn it on and walk away for an hour or 2, since you can't babysit it, you don't know what it's doing and when. And then you can SSH to it and finish everything else to it. But that's a little bit advanced for a lot of folks. So for most folks, you're going to want a couple of more useful things. I saw my name pop up over there. I'll catch you in a second, Dr. Quinn. So you're going to want a case. Again, 3D print your own. Go to the local Maker's Mark. Maybe thinking about an earlier topic we were talking about. Borrow their 3D printer. There's a million sites that you can download Pi cases for. Make sure it's for the 4 if you're getting a 4. Otherwise, the 2s and 3s and even the 1s use the same kind of case. You can buy an official Raspberry case for, they're a little overpriced in my mind, 10 to 15 bucks. There's a lot of third-party ones. Dr. Quinn asked me to point the camera a little lower. I'll do that. Sorry, I'm not looking at myself on the feed. I'm looking at my notes. Okay, how's that? I might be slumping in my chair. Okay, so case. It works easiest the first time if you treat this like a real computer. You're going to plug a mouse and a keyboard into it, and you're going to plug a monitor into it. So get an appropriate HDMI cable. They make them with micro connectors on one side and full size on the other. I bought recently a set of adapters, about a 5-pack of adapters from China that's got micro on one side and full size on the other, and it cost me $5. I was just a little higher, can't tell you. Not really showing much here, but get a case that fits the thing. Get an appropriate HDMI cable. You can even do HDMI to DVI if your monitor does DVI. All you lose is audio, and you can pipe audio the manual method. Scrolling through my notes. Keyboard and mouse. Now, I'll tell you what. I've got a Raspberry Pi running a media center in my living room. For that, it's pretty obvious that you want a wireless mouse or keyboard. So these are 10 to 15 bucks. It's got a little wireless dongle that goes into one of the USB ports on the Pi. I charge this thing up about once a month or so, and it's got a little touchpad on it. I know I'm covering my face. And all the keys and everything. These are just the bee's knees, is what an old guy would say. Let's move that over here. A couple other accessories you got to have. If your computer doesn't already have an SD slot, a micro SD slot, get a dongle. They're easy, they're cheap. They're $3 or $4. Probably cheaper if you buy them online and you're willing to wait. You can use any kind of computer to prep the card. A Windows machine, a Linux machine, a Mac machine. And of course, you got to download Noobs or the full Raspberry Pi OS. Get them all at raspberrypi.org/downloads. To clear off your SD card, go to sdcard.org download and install SD formatter. It's all pretty easy to use stuff, very easy to figure out. So the installation steps, did it. Put your SD card in your reader, pop the reader in, format the card so it's nice and clean and empty, and then copy. Yes, Michael, if you're listening. And copy the Noobs contents or the full Raspberry Pi OS to it. You don't have to do any special installation or formatting for it. You just copy the files. So what happens is when your Ras Pi boots up from it, it says, oh, I see that this has never been installed. I'll go to the install files, read them, and I'll do all the damage necessary to be done to the little card. During the install, at the beginning portion of it, it's going to ask you a couple of questions. Simple ones, what time zone are you in? What language is your keyboard? What language would you like to operate on? And so forth. So once it installs, we come up with something that looks like this. Come here, you. Screen share. Oh, I got to do this, huh? Excuse, please. Dave has messed up. Oh, it's just weird. Zoom is doing weird things to me. I don't know what it's doing. I don't think I quit. Am I still? Somebody post and let me know I'm still on. Okay, Scott says I'm live. So it's locked itself in the upper screen. Now you say all is good, but I'm not, because, all right, let's try this. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now I got to do this. So what I'm doing right now is connecting to an almost fresh installation. And then I'll screen share that with you. All right, that's a winner. And now we share. Go over to here, go over to here. That'll be interesting. Okay, I can't see a thing the way this guy has done me. So hopefully you can see the Raspberry Pi desktop. And this is what a new desktop looks like. Now, I did a Pi show a few weeks back, so I'm not going to go give you the grand tour of this thing. My goal today was to talk you through an installation process and provide you the instructions. Good, you can see the desktop, thank you. I'm going to do a second lab here shortly. We're going to set up a server on it. And at that point, let me see if I can get my notes. Yes, I can. So let me cover a couple of steps here because it's sort of an order thing that matters. I have copied my copy of Noobs or Raspberry Pi OS onto the micro SD card. I've installed the micro SD card into the little slot on the bottom of the Raspberry Pi circuit board. Now we're going to start plugging things in, and the last thing that you plug in is the power supply. Doesn't matter the order of the rest of the stuff. So plug in your keyboard and your mouse. Hold higher, please. Now I can see up there. Plug in your HDMI. If you're going to use a network during the installation, plug in a wired cable, hook that up to one of the ports, or your switch ports on your home router, whatever the case may be. And then when you've got all that stuff ready, and then put this in this case, if you didn't already do that first, at that point, you're ready to apply power to it. Either plug in the power cord, the micro C, the C connector, and then plug in the wall wart or do it in reverse order. Makes no difference. By the way, they make these really cool inline switches that lives between the wall wart and a C connector or a micro USB So you can power on and power off without tugging these in and out. I love those because these things wear up. Too tiny to see the Pi. That's all right. I'm just kind of pointing in general directions anyways. All right, so once it's powered up, then it starts the boot process. It starts the installation process. Answer the questions, wait it out. Now the installation itself doesn't take very long. 15 minutes. I've seen them go a little longer than that. But then what happens is it gets all done. The last thing it says is, hey, I don't know how old this copy of Raspberry Pi OS is or whatever you've installed. Would you like me to check for updates? And the answer to that is absolutely. That can go a couple hours. So now's a good time to go catch up on a project. It can go really quick too. If this came straight from the factory, it was freshly updated today, might go quicker. But be patient on that first time out. And of course, you won't get that question if you're not connected to a network. It will check. Once you're done, you don't have to reboot it. That's one of the really cool things about Linux. You know, every time you get a Windows 10 update, you're going to be rebooted sometime in the middle of the night. And there are a few things that happen to Raspberry Pis that require a reboot, but not many. I do it out of general principles, out of habit. So when you go to log in, if you have to fresh reboot, the default account name is Pi, P-I, lowercase. The default password is Raspberry, R-A-S-P-B, E-R-R-Y. Okay, that's it. Good enough. We're in, and then I'll show you some of the things that we've got to set up, you want to configure, and that you got to change. So I'm going to stay in this screen, and I'm going to head over here to the management icon, kind of like the start menu in Windows. And we're going to go down to preferences, and we're going to go down to the Raspberry Pi configuration. I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but there are two things that I want you to be aware of, maybe three. One, by default, the name of your installation is going to, of your Pi is going to be called Raspberry Pi. So now's a good time to change it. And that's one of the few changes that you make that will require a reboot for it to happen. Okay, you can read all that stuff and figure it out. It's all pretty easy. Here's what I want you to do. By default, everything here will be disabled. You want to enable SSH and you want to enable VNC. SSH, so we can establish a text connection with it with PuTTY or some other SSH interface, a client, and VNC so that we can access it graphically. I've got the camera installed on this one because I have a camera installed on this one. Just a quick look so you can see these screens under performance. Older version, not overclockable. By default, the GPU memory is 32 megabytes. If I'm short on memory, I'm happy leaving it at 32, but if I got plenty of memory to mess around with, I bump it to its max value of 128. And then here you can adjust if you pick the wrong keyboard or you're going to take it over to Japan, perhaps. If you're going to adjust and use a Japanese keyboard. Wi-Fi country matters. You get different channels available in different countries. All right, so you okay that. If you change the name, it's going to want to make you reboot. If you didn't change the name, you don't have to reboot. Everything will work. But every time it boots up, you're going to get a warning if you haven't changed the password for Pi. Hey, you've invoked SSH. The default password is still enabled. Let's shrink this now and share. There, back to me. Okay, I can do that. There we go. And it'll whine at you until you make that change. There's a way around it. You could keep the old password, make it stop whining, but that's not very secure, is it? Hey, we're done. We have installed a Pi, and it's fresh and it's ready to run. I'm going to take a pause here and take a look at some of these questions. Is there anything cool that I've missed? Thank you for letting me know I'm on. I'm just going to go back a little ways. I assume Scott's been taking care of everything and will send stuff to me. Hey, look at that. Scott's got Adafruits up there posted. You guys are such a good group. Reading. What hypervisor? I'm not sure if Elaine asked me that, but you can install any of the stuff that I've talked about with any of the major hypervisors, Hyper-V, VirtualBox. I'm like Mike. I've been a VirtualBox guy ever since they came out. Greg, you are a Fortuner, huh? Ooh, Watt4. That was the one I used. I love all the Watt products. I use Watt Basic, Watt Fort. That's out of the University of Waterloo in Canada. Can I point my camera down lower? Okay, that one's covered. That's, you can see how far back I am then with that. Yes, the Pi 4 has two, not mini HDMI, Elaine, they're micros. Yeah, I didn't realize I grabbed the whole screen when I did that. All right, good. We're caught up on questions. So now let's have some real fun. And I've made myself a little backup here and did a couple of things. I've been experimenting with all the stuff that I want to do in the evenings. Change screens there. It's very there we go. Fix that. So I usually have a couple of Pis sitting here on the desk and I'm messing around with them here and there, and they run Wi-Fi. And my Wi-Fi connection here isn't bad from where my WAP is. WAP's upstairs, I'm downstairs. So it's not the best it could be. So today when I was doing some last minute experiments to see how long this would take or that would take, I realized that that's going to be problematic. That some of the installs or some of the things that I did took way too long. I would have started them when I did the intro, and that step would be done. We're ready for a second step. So I took a belts and suspenders approach to the repair. First of all, I got a blank machine that we're going to use to start an installation. And if my primary fix works, we'll stick with it. But if not, I've got a second machine running that sort of like the television cooks, right? So now we put it in the oven and ding, look at that. There's one ready to go. So I've got one that's completed the long processes and is ready to take over. So what we're going to do next is dry my throat or moisten my throat. Am I sitting in a 2x2 room? I am in a little office in my house that's about 13 by 13. But I share it with my wife. She normally owned this office before we all got locked down. So that sort of tightened things up. My kid has a desk here from when he comes home from college or if he ever goes back. So it's tight space. But if you've seen me in the past, I have always been backed up to this curtain affair behind me. So last night, the missus and I did a lot of shuffling, and now I have about 2 feet to go back before I hit my curtains. So there's my room. Okay. It's my attic, fine. But it's not my basement because we're in Houston and we don't know from basements. All right, there's 3 ways to control your Pi. The method that we talked about here is easiest first. A physically attached mouse and keyboard, a physically attached monitor, and sit there and operate it like a computer and have a wireless connection or a wired connection. Method number 2 is with a terminal program. Now, Mike and I and most everybody has been using for many, many years an application called PuTTY. So I'm going to fire up a PuTTY connection. Let's share that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here. I think it's probably going to establish a connection and then make me unshare this menu and go to another menu, but we'll see. So I know the IP address of one of my Pis that's got SSH server running, 192.168.1.137. I'm using port 22, that's SSH, and that matches up with my settings down here. So we hit the open button. Screen sharing has stopped. That's okay. The window closed because it opened up my terminal session. So let me reshare that now. Okay, so there's an SSH terminal session that I've established or pre-established with 192.168.1.137. I'm going to log in as Pi. See, I'm looking at the screen share, not the actual PuTTY. There we go, Pi. Now, all Linux systems, whenever you type a password into them, they don't show anything. They don't show asterisks or spaces or anything. So as I'm going to type in the default password here, you won't even see the cursor move. RASPBERRY, enter, bam. I am in an SSH session. So here's a cool way to operate a Raspberry Pi that doesn't have a monitor and that doesn't have a keyboard and that doesn't have a mouse, as long as I have enabled SSH. And I can even do that before the installation. There's a little file that you can put on the micro SD card to enable SSH one time, just after the first boot. And that's enough to get you in here and then make permanent changes. I'm not going to do a full SSH class here. I'm not going to do a bunch of commands in here. I got that for another time. But I do want to show you one thing in here. Sudo raspi, I think it's dash config. Yeah. So here is the textual menu of that graphical menu that we saw to make changes. I can change the name of my computer in here. I can enable or disable SSH. I can do overclocking. There's advanced options. That's where I do that memory adjustment for video memory. Go back. And if I made any changes when I hit finish here, I'm doing this all with a keyboard, mouse doesn't work, then it would tell me when I got out, hey, you need to reboot. So SSH, a great way. Now, there comes the question. People ask this to Mike sometimes. People ask me all the time. And they certainly ask Michael Smyer, who is our real Linux guru, why should I learn this command line stuff and terminal stuff instead of the GUI stuff? Because you gotta. Because on occasion, there are things that you can do with the textual interface that you can't do. Let me close that. Exit. That you can't do with the graphical interface, that you can do with the textual interface, or better yet, there are things that you can often do billions of times faster, easier, and or better with the textual interface than the graphical. And of course, sometimes the opposite is true. So it behooves you, ooh, did he say behooves? To have a good comprehension of both environments. Now the other one, our good friend, VNC, we enabled that as an interface. So do I have any VNCs running right now? No there, none there. Oh no, that's a different thing. VNC, yeah, I got that one running. Let me close that so we can do it from scratch. Close you, yes. All right, now we're going to do a screen share. And we're going to go over to the VNC. So this is the last program that you need to download if you really want to make things cool and interesting. You go to Real VNC. There's a million VNC organizations out there. The one that works and is packaged with the Raspberry Pi is Real VNC. And download the Real VNC viewer. You don't need the VNC server. And if you accidentally download that and you install it, then you're going to be able to take over the screen and keyboard of whatever computer, whatever Windows machine you're installing this on. So these would normally come out blank, and you would do a new connection. I'm just doing a right click in here, and I'm going to say new connection. And I got to know the IP address. I'll show you some tools on later on how to do that, but we'll use this guy, 192.168. I don't want to do that one. I want to do a different one. Stand by. I'm going to do a fresh connect to that one we demoed there. Okay, he's 116. All right, so there's nothing in this screen right now. We're going to do our brand new first one, 192.168.1.116. You can put any name that you want for this in here. I'm going to call this my drama demo. And that's all you need. just creates an entry here. See all these other ones that are in the past? They have images on them. VNC remembers the last thing that was on the screen when you closed out of it. But this one we've never had a connection to. So here goes. I double click him. He reaches out, calls up Drama and says, okay, what do you want to do about this? Well, I'm going to need a login name and it's a new installation. So it's Raspberry. We see dots this time because we're not in a Linux system. This is a Windows app. I could remember the password. Signature, I'll get into it another time, but I'm just going to okay that. And stop this share. And what happened when you weren't looking was what you saw earlier. I'm at the desktop. So here is another method that says I don't need a physical attached keyboard and mouse and monitor. I'll just VNC to it. And the only thing that I've ever seen this thing try to choke on is streaming real-time audio, video, you know, like movies, MP4s, because I've got this thing tied up to a video camera right now. Whoops. Raspi vid minus T0. There we go. And now you're looking out my front yard, and I can't see how it looks on the YouTube feed, but my feed through VNC is really good real time. I saw a car just go by and it was kind of hoppy. That's sort of a little bit of nature. So it's not 100% real time, but you know, this is great for watching security and things like that. All right, stop share. How we're doing? We're 12 after 5. We're looking good. All right, let me check a couple of questions and then keep moving, just because these are fun to read. Not many new. All right. So now let's turn this thing into a CompTIA learning tool. I want to do an FTP server installation. And then I'm going to do a really cool demo with it because I've got another installed thing on here. Again, we're going to do a little bit of magic. I'm going to start it on that computer that you just saw. So let me go reconnect to it. Is there a big difference? Okay, this is a question that I slid and we've got here. Is there a big difference in performance between 4 and 8 gig models? I really want to try my hand at Pi, but don't want to spend more than I have to. There is no performance difference between the 1, the 2, the 4, or the 8 gig models unless you're doing stuff that runs out of RAM. I have never run out of RAM with anything I've done on a 2 gig model. Everything that I've ever played with a half a dozen servers and everything like that runs great on a 2 gig. I've purchased a 4 gig, I've installed it, and it, you know, I haven't used 2 gigs, so it certainly isn't a problem. And I haven't purchased an 8 gig yet. Just can't convince the missus. You don't max out the 2 gig. What do you need an 8 for? You don't max the 4. But as far as they're identical, there's a little bit different quantity in the swap file. But again, if you're not maxing RAM, none of that matters. So no, by all means, if you're going to get your first one, again, the price difference for Raspberry Pi 4B 1 gig and 2 gig is 0. They're both 35 bucks. They're going to keep doing that, I think, until they run out of the 1 gig models. So get the 2, and that's going to serve you unless you've got something really, really unusual. I would also, I've never done this, go to raspberrypi.org, check the forums, and do a search on that. Has anybody ever maxed out a 4 gig or an 8 gig model? They're all so new. If there's a yes answer to that, there's not going to be many. So no, I think it's a good bet to start out with the smaller ones. Now, as far as the XD cards go, start at 16 and sky's the limit. I don't think I buy anything anymore less than 32. And when they go on sale for cheap, I pick up 128s and 64s. All right, so I was about to do this. I got a good connection there. So I'm going to go back and screen share with that again. Too many different apps. I don't know what I'm running right here. There we go, this one. All right, so there's my real-time video feed again. We'll close out of that. Oops. No, I don't want to stop the share. There we go. All right, so I'm going to do an installation of an FTP server. Before you install any new application, you want to do an update and an upgrade. And I did that this morning because that Wi-Fi connection was so slow, it took forever. But I'll show you the commands that you need to do that with. So you can do this with a terminal connection. You can do it with graphical, but this is one of those cases where it's a lot easier. There's two different commands that you run, and you do them as sudo. Run as a supervisor. Sudo apt, or at your option, you can say apt-get. They're very similar in update. And then you would hit the enter key. I'm not going to do that because it takes a few moments. And then the other one's longer. After you do that, you do sudo apt upgrade. Now what update does is it looks at all of the programs that are installed here, all the native ones, all the ones that you've added, everything. And it goes out to the site that maintains those, or sites, and says, here's the versions I have. What are the most current versions? And it updates a little file that says, hey, these particular programs need updating. These ones don't exist anymore, and so forth. And then when you run the upgrade program, it's going to say, hey, do you actually want to do this? And it will reach out and upgrade all your programs. Before it does that, it's going to give you one chance to say, yes or no, I want to or don't want to upgrade these. Before you do almost any program installation, you've got to do these two things. Now I'm going to show you just real quick for fun, without a class on it. You can see it and you can experiment with yourself, how to combine commands together on one line. I can say sudo apt, stop it, update, then ampersand, when it's done, do sudo apt, and I'm even going to pre-answer the question so I can walk away. I'm going to say yes to the yes or no question, and now I hit the enter key and walk away and come back in later, and it's all done. So cool, huh? All right, so I've done that. Now the FTP program that I'm going to use today is a fairly common one. It's called VSFTPD, all one word. So I'm going to start the installation of it, and if it goes quick, I've got a wired connection now in addition to the Wi-Fi. That's my primary backup to speed things up. Then we'll stick with it, and if not, I'll move to the oven that's already got the baked turkey in it. So I'm going to say sudo apt, and this time I'm going to install a program, and then the name of the program, VSFTPD. VS, the group that created it, FTP, because it's a file transfer protocol server, and D, because it's a daemon, it's a server. A daemon or a daemon lives inside a computer and listens to provide those file services. We hit the big enter key. We'll stick around here for just a couple of moments and see how it goes. It says, hey, you're going to suck up a whole 252 KB of data. Here's why I like apt. It gives me this progress bar, 66% done, and it doesn't tick up one at a time. It's already 83% and so forth. Apt-get doesn't do that. Hey, sweet. Don't worry about those warnings or missing LSB tags. We have successfully installed a VNC server. Unfortunately, it doesn't work because it's got to have some configuration. It would kind of sort of work, but there are things that I definitely want to do to it. So I'm going to stick with it on here. Okay, we did the putty, we did the passwords. I did the VNC, I'm installing it. Okay, did that. All right. So the first thing I've got to do is update a configuration file. This is going to be a little challenging with the screen share and things like that. And I'm going to walk you through every single step of this, and it's going to take about 6 minutes or so. Bear with me. But then we're going to switch into some really cool stuff. I got some awesome demos for you. And that's when this first one finally gets fun and interesting. All right, I'm going to edit a file. I don't use the VI editor like Michael. So I'm going to say sudo nano. That's the name of my editing program. And then the location and file name is in the off the root in the etc folder in a file called vsftpd.conf for configuration. You'll find that the very common file name extension in Linux, a configuration file, is a conf file. In configuration files in most languages, certainly including Linux, I'm trying something here to see if I can see both of my notes and that at the same time. Not really. A line that starts with a pound sign is remarked out. It doesn't happen. So my handy dandy little notes. Oh, I know what I can do. I can slide this guy up. There we go. I got to find a couple of things. And you would get this from the instructions. You get this from my instructions. So first of all, I got to find a file or a line that says anonymous enable. So I'm going to do, where are you? It says Control W, where is? That's kind of like a Control F in Windows. So we do Control W and look for anon. And it's found it. And I'm supposed to unrem anonymous enable equals no. Well, it's already unremmed. It doesn't have a pound sign in front of it. So cool. Then I got to find one, unrem local unable equals yes. Well, that one's already unremmed. The first time I did this install many years ago with this program, I wrote these instructions for myself because they needed to be changed. But obviously the current version, somebody says, hey, no, those are pretty good defaults. And then same thing on this third one, write enable equals yes, unrem it. Well, it's not remmed, so that's cool. And now we got to find one called, we'll use Control W, local underscore umask. Ah, that one's got to be changed. So that's got to be unremmed. So I'm going to backspace over that. Local umask equals 22. Hey, moving along. And then the last one, I know this one from experience. There's a little bit of trick with this one. There are two lines that say exactly the same thing, and you have to change the first one. So the line says chroot underscore local equals yes. So I'm going to do a Control W and look for chroot. Means change root. I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, there it is. And look at that. It's unremmed. That's brand new because I've had to do that. Again, this line appears 2 times. That's why I went to the top of the file so I could make sure when I did a search, I found the first hit. Okay, so that's done. Now one more. This one's really cool. I do a W on here. I'm going to look for the word banner. So when you log into an FTP server, it has the ability to put up a welcome screen. Right now it says the FTPD banner says, welcome to the total DEA FTP service. This thing must have, I deleted this earlier, deleted the FTP server, but this file must have stayed intact. So I'm going to change this to the drama, drama Pi Day Friday FTP service. So when we log into this guy later, we're going to see that. Anything else here that I need to change? Yeah, I got to add 2 lines. Ugh. All right, this sucks. Since I'm using the native terminal in the Pi, I'm going to have to manually type this in. If you use putty, you can copy and paste. Oh, hey, once again, this file is old. It was remembered. So these files don't exist in the default. User subtoken equals $user. That means I'm creating a variable called user that figures out who you are based on what your login name is. And then it says the place where you're going to store your uploaded and downloaded files is in whack home, whack your user account name, and whack a folder called FTP. So I've made a few changes to this. I've got to save those changes. To do that, I exit. I'm going to use this Control X. and it's going to say, hey, you've made changes. Do you want to save those changes? If I say no, I would lose them all. So I'm going to say Y for yes. And then it says, what's the name of the file you want to save it to? Well, since I want to overwrite the old file, he's put that name in there, but this would be kind of a neat way to do a save as is really what you get out of it. So I save that, it's done. Now, in order to make those changes all effective, I could reboot the Pi, or I'm going to do my friend here, sudo. It's a service. It's a file transfer protocol server. So sudo service is the name of the command. The name of the service that I'm going to restart, vs ftpd, and then the command restart. There are 3 commands that work with sudo, or with service, and there's more than that. There's start, stop, and there's restart. This is going to happen so fast. Boom, done. The FTP server came down, it came back up, it read its configuration files, and now the new files are up and running. That's how to install an FTP server. Well, mostly. There is one other thing now that we've got to do. We told the FTP server where to find or save, upload, and download files. Now we actually have to make those folders and files exist. So if you type in the CD command in most versions of Linux, it takes you to your home directory, no parameters after it. And I can confirm that by typing in pwd, present working directory. I'm in /home/pi. And if I do an ls to see what's in there, hey, there's no folder in there called FTP. So I'm going to make one. Make dir FTP. If I do an ls, you can now see it in, where'd you go? Yeah, second entry in the blue lines. I'm going to go in there, cd space FTP, and I'm going to make another folder, make dir files. ls files is the only thing that's in there. And just for hoots, I have some files that I'm going to throw in there, so we've got something to take a look at. cd into files, copy, tilde, that's another shortcut for home directory, temp, star to here. Okay, now if I do an ls, boom, there's a bunch of files in there. I'm going to hit the cd command, go back up to my home folder. There's one more thing I need to do to those folders to make them usable by the user. That's a terrible way to say things, isn't it? I'm going to say chmod, change the mode to A/A-W. When I do another class on this, I'll explain all this stuff. Just bear with me. FTP. So now if I do an LSL, ls space -L, over here on FTP, the folder, I have made these settings. I know that A-W seems to be a little cryptic to turn into -XR, -XR, -X. But again, bear with me for another class or two, and then we'll get into that. This is now a totally, fully, completely cool working FTP server. And it's perfect. It's 3:30. Now I'm going to demo a couple of really cool, amazing things. And one of the things I want to do, I'm going to do it on another server. It's set up identical to this, but that one has one other program in it. So bear with me. I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to close that guy out. It's going to knock your socks off, especially those of you in Net Plus. But even if you're in A+, this is just nothing but raw goodness. Okay, I'm going to open up another graphical session with a different Pi. Okay, it's up and running. I'm going to share it, show you what I've got going on here. The Pi configuration is almost identical, but there's one important difference that's got suckness to it. Raspberry. So this Raspberry Pi, I might be able to, let's try that again, R-A-S-P-B-E-R-R-Y. Okay, I'm going to show you this Pi physically on the screen as soon as that thing comes up. Come on, darling. There we go. All right, I'm going to break the share for a second so I can pick it up and stick it in front of the camera. And hopefully all of the magic that I've done to it, all right, it's not going to work. It has a touch screen mounted on it. It's a 7-inch, the official Raspberry Pi touch screen. And when you do what I'm doing with that, by the time you pass it through VNC and then through Zoom, the resolution comes down to less than HD. So I apologize for that, but you're still going to be able to see everything that I need you to see. So let me go back and reshare that, because this is just going to be so cool. Some of it, because I don't want to switch back and forth through 35 different screens, it takes too long. What am I looking for here? Oh, I want to share. One of the things I'm going to do is run a program in one window that you're not going to see, but you'll see all the results and it'll just be cool. And then we'll go back and visit that. Zoob, zoob, zoob. Okay, share, push one. Am I running it? Yes. Oh, there it is. Okay. Click there, share it. All right. Almost no matter what I do here, you would not see anything happen as far as the FTP server goes. So not much point in watching this except for this. Mike did a class a few weeks back on WireShark. I've got WireShark installed on my Raspberry Pi. Hey, did you know you could install WireShark on a Raspberry Pi? Well, you can. So I'm going to fire up WireShark. Buzz, 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 grind, grind, grind. Here's where you see kind of the limitation of the resolution. I lose some of the stuff off the right-hand side of the screen, but it's okay. So you can see I've got some Bluetooth activity getting picked up. All my LANs are being picked up right now. The wireless LAN, the wired LAN. And I'm just going to say, I don't care what we pick up from here. I'm going to say any. And I'm going to click the WireShark start button. And it's capturing now. Look at that puppy go. All right, now I'm going to unshare that. And we're going to establish an FTP session with it. So I'm going to open up a command prompt. You don't have to do this in administrative mode. You'll see it in a second. Okay, it's running. Now I'm going to share it. All right. Hang on to your socks, kids. This is going to not seem impressive until we get into it. So Microsoft has a built-in FTP client. We just type in FTP. Bam, done. I'm going to establish a session with that FTP server. It's on 192.168.1.137. Hey, look at that line here. Welcome to Raspberry Pi FTP service. It's a different server. It's not the one that says drama, but all right. So we give it a login name. There's Pi. Prompts me for a password. Again, you won't see it while this is happening. RASPBERRY. Login successful. So I do an LS, and I'm in the folder called FTP. Now you can't tell that. If I do PWD, it thinks I'm in the root. That's what the chroot thing did. It made a false root. Even though there's 2 levels of structure above me, it's hidden from anybody who connects here with an FTP connection. All I can see is the folder down beneath. So let's go in there, CD space files. We'll do an LS, and there's all the files within there. And I'm going to copy one of those to my Windows machine. All I have to do is say get WShark3.png. If you type it wrong, you get an error message. If you type it right, usually you get nothing, but FTP is kind of nice. All right, so I'm done with that. Oh, let me see if I got this. Do I have that SIG-verif in here? Nah, it's in the other one. All right, so I'm done with that. To quit out of FTP, you say bye. And now I'm going to unshare. Hey, it's me again. And now we're going to go back over to the Pi and take a look at what WireShark found. This is, for me, a reason to live. Now, WireShark is still capturing every piece of traffic that's going in and out of there. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But I'm just going to stop the capture now. It's all still there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any activity that happened on, somebody typed it in, give me the 2 standard ports used by FTP. I'm going to wait. I'm not going to type this in until somebody puts the 2 standard FTP ports. I can wait. I can drink tea and choke on it. Either that or my feed has frozen. Come on, baby. All right, you're lucky. I'm going to presume that it froze. If you didn't know, it's port 20 and port 21. So watch this. There we go. Thank you. Oh, nice try, no cigar. I've seen you before. Welcome, nice try. TCP dot port space equals 20. Notice that it's pink right now. That says what you've got in there is an invalid syntax or command, but you can keep typing it and make it right. So when I hit the enter key on here, it got rid of all the traffic except the traffic that's port 20. Now FTP uses port 20 and port 21, as was pointed out. 21 is for commands and 20 is for moving data. So I'm going to go over to 21 for a second and show you the commands, because here's where we can do something really cool. You can see from my ephemeral port 57240 to server port 21, there's an ACK. Somewhere up here, hey, there was a SYN ACK. That's the TCP 3-way handshake, right? Hey, I'd like to do a port 21 deal with you. I understand that. I acknowledge that. Good. I acknowledge that you acknowledge, and now we start happening. So watch what happens when I right click on this thing and I say follow the TCP stream. FTP is not secure. Everything that I typed in shows up, directly readable. So if there was a middleman watching my data, show you how to do that in another class, they can see exactly what happened here. Now, there's a couple different sessions that happened to pull that off. That was kind of the initial. Go down here a little further down and get some more of it. Oops, there we go. Oh, that was still the same. Good enough. You get the idea. I'm going to show you something else. Now, if we go back and do a search on that TCP port is 20, and I follow a stream, just pick anywhere in here, this is going to be unrecognizable. But it's not scrambled. It's not encrypted. This is the file contents of that PNG file. So I could use WireShark, be the middleman, capture this stuff, and then just save this as a PNG file. And wham, I'm looking at it. So imagine what would happen if this wasn't an innocuous PNG file. This was my resume with my social security number on it, my tax filing, my fill in the blank here. So this is a reason that in the real world, I'm not going to use native FTP. I'm going to use something a little more sophisticated. All right, let me show you almost the same thing in slightly different way. And that'll be perfect. And we can wind up with questions and got a couple other generic things to show you. I don't need to WireShark capture this anymore. I'm done with this. Control Q gets you, oops. Continue without saving. There we go. Control Q twice. I'll unshare that. Hey, and I'm back to me. I'm going to open up a browser. I have one open, as a matter of fact. I'm going to open up a new tab on it. And I'm going to share that tab with you. All the cool kids will recognize this browser. Everybody else will say, hey, I want to be a cool kid too, and switch to the Brave browser. Go over here to screen share. Oh, you know what? I've never tested this with Brave. I've always done this with Firefox. So you know what? I'll bet you dollars to donuts this doesn't work, but it'll be a fun experiment for all of us. We're supposed to try everything first. All right, 192.168.1.137. Crossing fingers. Oops. Okay, that's a web server that I got running on it. Let's start that instead of with HTTP with FTP : whack whack. And it says, nope, I'm not an FTP. Oh, yes, it is. It's an FTP browser too. So Pi and Raspberry, RASPBERRY, sign in. Ask me if I want to save the name and password. I don't, because I change this stuff all the time. But hey, look at that. I can now, oops, I didn't need to double click that. Right click, save file. I can't add a file with this browser, but cool. Firefox does this. I don't think that Edge does it, but I could be wrong on that. I haven't tried the newest version of Edge with it. Let me show you one more here. Let's see, we'll close that. Stop the share. And the last one final FTP program. This is a free download. One of the most awesome FTP programs in existence. It works as a server. It works as a client. It's FileZilla. You download it, you install it. I've already got it installed. So I'm going to run it and share it. Okay, this is FileZilla, the client. On the left side is me. On the right side is an FTP server that I've connected, that I'm going to connect to. So I got to connect to it. Here's his IP address. You can have a DNS name. I'm just keeping this raw for today's class. 192.168.1.137. I know you're memorizing this. It's okay. You can't get past my router. Username is Pi. Password RASPBERRY. Since I'm using standard ports, I don't have to plug a port value in here. I'm just going to say quick connect. It says, hey, it's not a secure server. You sure you want to do that? Yeah, I do. And there we go. I can click and drag back and forth between any accessible folder that my FTP client can get to on the server side, to or from any folder here on my client side. Cool, eh? And if I were doing WireShark with this stuff, it would look exactly the same. It doesn't care that I'm using FileZilla or the FTP command line or a browser. It just says, hey, you made a port 20 and a port 21 connection. Cool, here's what I see, here's what I show you. It's not encrypted, it's all in the clear. Anybody could intercept it if they were a middleman. Pretty slick, huh? All right, let me break that connection. If you are going to disconnect from the server using FileZilla, probably just quit right out of it. Export, import, edit, view, transfer, server, disconnect. There we go. Control D. Okay, I'm out. This guy's all blank. It's got a history. So you might, if you're the paranoid type, clear your history and clear the quick connect bar. I'm paranoid, but not that paranoid. Hey, what did we do today? We did 3 things. In an hour and 45 minutes. I do have 15 minutes to go, and I got a few more things that's going to fill that. Ooh, what did I do over there? Yeah, I didn't. There we go. I can see that. Now I can get back to the feed and see people. So we talked about what a Pi is and how it can be used. Lots from the stream. All right, I'll get right on them. But I'm going to do my summary. So what's a Pi? How can I use it in an educational environment? Where can I buy it from? How do I set it up? What do I do with it once I set it up? Give me some different ways to access it. and let's do something practical. Let's make an FTP server, a few things more along the way. There's tons and tons and tons of good stuff there. All right, so I'm going to read questions. Scott says there are Menelese. I'm going to wing it back to, I have mine timestamped, so I'm at the point where Dr. Quinn asked about the 2x2 room. I know I'm a little close to the camera. Okay, I'm not, I got to read closer up. Okay, lots of people use terminal to SSH. Are there advantages to using PuTTY? Yes, PuTTY has a lot more tools. It's got TTY and RSH, and there's some really slick SCP tools buried in its guts. Michael Schmeier, our super guru in here, is pushing against using PuTTY as an SSH client. It's an SSH client, and it's no better or different than any other SSH client. But it's his belief right now that the new SSH client is the same old one that we used to use in Windows, but you get it from the new Windows Terminal program. You get that from the Play Store, the Microsoft Store, and it got new and more modern fonts. And that, as Windows Terminal, it's got some more cool features. But as far as SSH goes, it's another SSH terminal, but it looks a little different. Yeah, VNC viewers, absolutely great. There's VNC viewers. Yeah, it's kind of like remote desktop, of course. VNCs, there's a dozen or more, many more probably, different kinds of VNC viewers. Again, the one that we're using here exists because they package it, excuse me, with Raspberry Pi. And normally you have to pay for real VNC, which is just a great VNC remote box so that you can get it free with Raspberry Pi. For me, is icing on the cake. We use PuTTY to troubleshoot modems back in Roadrunner Day. Sure. In fact, anything that's got some kind of router interface, they usually have some kind of SSH or maybe even Telnet. Use RubyMC with Kali on the Pi. Wow. I am in a holy war with one of the developers and supporters of Kali on the Pi for exactly that. The version of Kali, there's different versions, there's different developers, different packagers. The one that I've been playing with, the answer to that is no, and it drives me bananas. I want to use it remotely. There may be another version that I haven't played with that you could use remotely, but I don't know it at the moment. The one I play with, no. Scott, you're killing me. Dave is Pi Wizard. Dave is geek. That is definitely true on that one. 420, 421. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, 420. That'd be cool if FTP was 420, right? Yes, Brave browser. Scott likes it too. Oh, I'm so excited that worked as an FTP browser. Given its secure nature, I'm actually surprised that it worked. I thought FTP was secure in some sense. No, SFTP is secure and FTPS is secure. And time permitting, I'm going to show you another way to transfer files today. If not, I've got it held off and put it in my schedule for next Friday. Those of you who are familiar with SCP, if you have an SSH server running on a computer, you can do SCP, secure copy. It's kind of like a little miniature FTP that's secure. It uses the SSH server to provide security. Very, very cool. In fact, I'm going to sidetrack on that. I did something this week, last night or 2 nights ago. Let's see if we can get this close up to my face. There we go. I installed an SSH server on my Android phone. Didn't know you could do that. It just kind of dawned on me. I was doing all this playing around with SSH, and Android is a Linux-based system, so what the heck? And it's all stemmed from the fact that I was playing with this SCP command. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to see if I could do SCP, secure copy, to my Android and from my Android phone. And gosh darn it, if you can't. Once you set up an SSH server on here, you can do file copy. Now, I'd use, obviously, a more elegant solution, I think, when I normally want to copy files to and from. But that is just awesome for quick down and dirty. The app that I used is simple SSHD. You can find that in the Google Play Store. Alice, sorry, today you had to leave earlier. Sorry, I missed that, Alice. I know people are fading out fast. That's okay. We've only got 10 minutes left. Stick around for the last 10 minutes. Good stuff. See you Monday, said Tollywood. Oh, no. Okay. Tollywood said goodbye. Transplant. Thank you, Dave. Or thank you, Transplant. Get it. Wade gave you the look. It's only 35 bucks. Okay. Difference between SFTP and FTPS, right? So again, kind of way beyond where I wanted to go today, but we'll do the speed version. I always get it backward. SSH uses FTPS. So it's kind of like SCP, except it's a little more full featured and uses the secure features of SSH. FTPS, that's FTP over secure sockets, or TLS is really the way it's done. So that's done with a certificate. And over the course of time, either Mike will do, he has talked about FTPS and SFTP in his regular AMAs. Down road, we can take a look at doing that here, but that's a little farther down. Can't wait to buy a few of these. That's the way I think. It's going to lead to my divorce. I'm coming up on 35 years this October, but if I get any more pies, 35 may be the last number I get to count. All right, that takes care of as far as the questions I can see. Let me just talk for a couple more minutes here on my final notes. Did the WireShark demo, did FileZilla. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here is kind of the quasi-closing notes, and then we'll just take questions until the bitter end, or if there is no more questions and I get done with these notes in time, then we'll call it, we'll do a mic and finish a couple of minutes early. Next Friday, there are commands that you have to know for A+ that are command line specific in Linux. So we're going to do a little more FTP. We're going to use FTP this time. I'm going to dive into that. That doesn't take long. There's only a handful, 6 or 8. You don't have to know them all in great depth, just enough to get functional. And if you only saw 1 or 2 of them, the 2 most common ones, get and put, or knowing the difference between get and mget and put and mput, that'll probably get you through it. But I got the time to cover more, so I will. And again, it's not going to take us long. What I want to get into for real next time is Linux. So this isn't going to be a real super Pi class. It's going to be a Linux class. And what we're going to talk about is the standard Linux file system, ext4, how it's set up, how it's organized, how we navigate it, and how we manipulate it. I'm not going to kill a whole hour on that. That would go crazy. But we're going to look at the important common commands that we have to know from the A+ objectives that are related to that. I want to show you a little bit about how their file system security works. And if you're becoming a guru in A+ about NTFS, you're going to go, oh my God, that's all they do? Yeah, that's all they do. But for what it does and how it does it, it's enough. It's okay. Thank you for the explanation. Dave has crazy knowledge. Dave is crazy. I'll go with that. Thanks, Dr. Quinn. All right. So a couple quick reminders. Let's switch back to Uncle Screen Share. That means you got to go here. No, not there. That's different. Here. Screen share. And share this. No, not that, you goober. That's my notes. I'm looking. There it is. All right, so just a reminder, good through August 2nd. 50% off total seminars, video bundles, the super bundles, and the video/tester bundles, not individual courses. The price is great. You guys are the only people getting the offer, so take advantage. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, it was 60%, then it went back to 50. So I don't know what they're going to do next week. I have nothing to do with that group, but you always got to keep your eye on them in case they feel like dropping them to 40. that high pressure sales? I'm not a sales guy, I don't know. If you want to talk with me, communicate with me outside of this forum, by all means, please do. Catch me at my Total SEM address, Dave R., or at my personal, drushtx. Dave Rush is in Texas at Yahoo. I'm going to Steam again sometime in the next week. So you'll find me as Blood Rush. And you can always call the office, leave a message, or try to convince them to get in touch with me. I want to do my thank yous. I missed them last time I did this. So I even made notes. Next week, all their commands. So my eternal gratitude to Mike for allowing me this time to share with you and do some cool things, I hope. And we'll keep her going. It was, there are some minor adjustments I'm going to make with moving around to the different screens, but in general, I think we accomplished a lot today. Many thanks, of course, to Scott, the brains behind the scene. You can't imagine all the things that he's running simultaneously. Last second from Mary, I'll get it. And Michael, of course, Michael does the tech guru stuff in here, setting up connections to the YouTube stream and fixing the techno problems, as well as answering questions and clearing up my mistakes. So super stuff. Thanks to you, right? This doesn't happen without you. We're here for you. And if you guys look at this and say, you know what, that's not for me, and we wind up with 10 or 12 people, hey, we'll fade it away. But if it starts growing into 600 people like last time, then we're going to be here forever and ever. All right, some questions popped up just to close things out for the last 4 minutes. Hey, I love that. We kind of nailed that on time. Special deals, Dr. Moon is here till death do us part. Mario, what Linux are you going to use on the Pi? Well, I 95% use Raspberry Pi OS. I have certainly used Kali. I used OpenELEC because I've got a Kodi server up and running. I've experimented a little bit with some of the esoteric ones, but I don't know if I said this in the beginning, I certainly intended to. I'm not a Linux guru. I speak Debian to a functional level. Arch does things a little differently. Some of the other ones do. RISC does things certainly very differently. So for my purposes, for the purposes of teaching classes and making it easy, I think the short answer is I like and use mostly Raspberry Pi OS, formerly known, if you weren't here at the beginning, as Raspbian. This is a great stream, Dave. Thank you. Nice try, no cigar. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see you again, Brendan. Always a pleasure. Heisey, hello. Haven't watched all the threads, so I haven't seen how much you were here. Fun. And yes, it is our pleasure. Greg Davis, awesome. Can't wait. Yes, you gotta play with these things. Again, they're so cheap. You've got a mouse, you've got a keyboard, you've got a monitor. You might need, if you're going to get a Raspberry Pi 4, a micro to full-size HDMI adapter. But if you play with the Raspberry Pi 3, hey, check Craigslist for them. Cannot tell you how many times I've bought Pis off Craigslist. When I go on the road and teach a class, I always get there a half a day early, check into the hotel, do a little prep on the class if I need to, and then on Craigslist. Let's see who's dumping Pis in DC this week, or Virginia, or Portland, or whatever. Yeah, I buy new, but I sure try not to. So get them. And again, so if you've got a Raspberry Pi 3, you've already probably got a full-size HDMI connector and an HDMI television. So you're ready to go. Just go drag your Pi over there to the table that the TV's sitting on and start playing. That old 32-inch that you don't use anymore and are thinking about putting in the kids' room if you haven't already, that's going to be the monitor for their first Pi, right? Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Mario, Kali's awesome, most definitely. Yeah, I will try to get a clearer answer. Oh, hey, you know what? I did. I took a mic. I got an envelope and a pencil. I will see if I can put a little more effort back into Kali that works with VNC. You know what? Now that I'm writing it down that way, watch this. So the Kali that I'm working with, I don't think it uses Raspberry Pi OS because I tried to install, it doesn't have VNC, real VNC on it. I hadn't considered trying to manually install Real VNC, probably because it's not free, but I'll double check that. And if not, again, there are 4,900 other versions of VNC. I used to use, before this one got packaged with here, Type VNC. So I'll see if I can get that going and let you know next time we do this. What are we getting here? Scott, what are you asking? The second question. Just running Kodi from a Pi 0, would that be okay? Maybe. Remember, you've only got a ½ gig of RAM. You're going to store anything that you save on the micro SD card, which can be any size. It can support up to 128 gig with the new operating system. I think the answer to that is it would be okay, but let's look at the things that it doesn't have. You have to do everything remotely because you don't have any USB ports on it. So no screen keyboard. You could do monitor. If I were to try it on one, yeah, okay, try it. What the heck? You got nothing to lose. Install OpenELEC on it because that strips out all the stuff from Raspberry Pi OS that you don't need. So that'll free up some of the memory. So run OpenELEC, run the current version, and give it a try. And if that doesn't suit you well, basically for space and size, then get one of these. This is called Wi-Pi. It's got a wireless interface and 3 USB ports on it. So with that, you can hook up to a decent size, higher performance external drive for storing things like that, or setting up a Plex server, something like that. So yeah, it's a $5 experiment or a $13 experiment if you go on the high end. My gut feeling is I don't expect it to do well. For an extra 10, 12 bucks, you get a Raspberry Pi 3, and I know that works. I got that running in a number of places for friends and relatives and myself. But what the heck, blow a couple of bucks and give it a stab. Okay, we're in the thank yous. It is 02, which means it's go time. Scott, somebody, yes, ready to end. We'll do the mic quickie wave, but thank you all for being here. I'll see you next Friday, and we'll see you all Monday for Mike's regular AMA. Bye-bye.